She'd disappeared 18 years ago, buried her past so deep that no one would ever connect the exhausted waitress to the woman she used to be. Now the billionaire's son sat in her diner demanding service, and when she refused, his eyes narrowed with dangerous recognition, and she realized that some secrets refused to stay hidden forever. The lunch rush was dying down when Maya saw him walk through the door, and her entire body went cold. She was carrying a tray of dirty dishes, her arms aching from the weight, and for a moment she forgot how to move. The tray wobbled dangerously in her hands before she managed to set it down on the nearest table, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. It had been 18 years. 18 years since she'd walked away from that life, since she'd disappeared in the middle of the night with nothing but a duffel bag and her 3-year-old daughter. 18 years of looking over her shoulder, of changing her name, of building a new existence in this small town where nobody asked questions and nobody cared about her past. And now here he was, walking into Rosie's diner like he owned the place, wearing a suit that probably cost more than she made in a year. Brandon Whitmore, the son of one of the most powerful families on the East Coast. The young man she'd been assigned to protect a lifetime ago, back when she'd been someone completely different. He slid into a booth near the window, his 2 friends joining him, all of them absorbed in their phones, laughing at something on a screen. He didn't recognize her. Why would he? She'd been 24 then, sharp and polished in her dark suits and earpiece, one of the youngest personal security specialists the Whitmore family had ever hired. Now she was 42, her hair a different color, her face marked by years of struggle and single motherhood. Hidden behind the anonymity of a waitress uniform in a town 3,000 miles from where their paths had crossed. Rick called from the kitchen asking about Table 7's order, and Maya realized she was just standing there, frozen. She forced herself to move, to grab menus, to walk over to their booth with legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. "Welcome to Rosie's," she said, keeping her voice level, her face neutral. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" Brandon barely glanced up. "Coffee, black, and make it actually hot. The last place we stopped served me something that was basically lukewarm." His voice hit her like a physical thing. She'd heard that voice in her earpiece for 2 years straight. Had listened to him complain about everything from the temperature in the car to the restaurants his father chose for business dinners. He'd been 21 then, entitled and careless, treating his security team like they were furniture. Some things apparently hadn't changed. "Coffee," she repeated, writing it down with shaking hands. "And for your friends?" They ordered burgers and sodas, none of them really looking at her. To them, she was invisible, just another waitress in a forgettable diner in a forgettable town. She took their menus and walked back to the kitchen, her mind racing. What was he doing here? The Whitmores didn't come to places like this, didn't travel without security, didn't slum it in roadside diners, unless something had changed. Unless the family's circumstances had shifted in ways she hadn't kept track of. She'd stopped following the news about them years ago. It had been too dangerous, too painful, too much of a reminder of everything she'd lost that night. Maya poured their coffee with mechanical precision, delivered their drinks, took their food orders to Rick. She moved through the motions of her job while her past sat 15 feet away, laughing with his friends, completely unaware that the woman serving him had once taken a bullet meant for him. Her shoulder throbbed with phantom pain, the old scar tissue pulling tight. It had been during a fundraiser at the Whitmore estate, security already on edge because of threats that had been coming in for weeks. She'd been standing near Brandon, scanning the crowd, when she'd seen the glint of metal, seen the man's arm raising, and her body had moved before her brain caught up. She'd thrown herself in front of Brandon, felt the impact like being hit with a sledgehammer, and then everything had gone white and distant and strange. She'd woken up 3 days later in a private hospital room, her shoulder reconstructed with pins and plates, her career effectively over. The Whitmores had been grateful, of course. They'd sent flowers, had offered her a generous payout, had assured her she'd always have their support. But Maya had known the truth. She'd become a liability. She knew too much about their security protocols, their vulnerabilities, their private business. And more than that, she'd seen something that night, in the chaos after the shooting. Something she wasn't supposed to see. Brandon's father, Marcus Whitmore, had been on the phone in the hallway outside her hospital room. She'd been drifting in and out of consciousness, the painkillers making everything fuzzy, but she'd heard enough. Heard him telling someone that the shooter had been handled, that there would be no trial, no questions, no investigation. Heard him say that sometimes problems needed to disappear completely. The man who'd shot her had never made it to police custody. The official story was that he'd died by suicide in his cell, but Maya had heard the truth in Marcus Whitmore's voice. She'd understood in that moment exactly how dangerous her knowledge had become. So she'd taken the payout, signed the non-disclosure agreement, and then she'd run. Changed her name from Miranda Vasquez to Maya Chen, moved across the country, found this job at Rosie's, and built a quiet life where nobody knew who she'd been or what she'd done. She'd raised Emma alone, never talking about the past. Never explaining why they didn't have any family photos from before Emma turned 3. Now Rick was calling her, telling her their burgers were up, and Maya carried the plates over with hands that had stopped shaking but felt numb. She set the food down in front of them, refilled their waters, and turned to leave. "Wait," Brandon said, and Maya's blood turned to ice. She turned back slowly. "Yes?" He was looking at her now, really looking at her, and she saw the moment of confusion cross his face. "Do I know you? You look familiar?" "I don't think so," Maya said, keeping her voice steady. "I've got one of those faces." But he was still staring, his brow furrowed, and she could see him trying to place her. His friend made a joke, pulling his attention away, and Maya retreated to the safety of the kitchen. Her hands were shaking again. She leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths, trying to calm the panic rising in her chest. She couldn't afford for him to recognize her. Couldn't afford for the Whitmores to know where she was. The non-disclosure agreement she'd signed had been ironclad, and she'd broken it by disappearing, by changing her identity, by essentially going into hiding. If they found her, if they thought she was a threat to their carefully constructed empire and all its dark secrets, she didn't know what they'd do. But she'd seen what happened to people who became inconvenient to the Whitmore family. The lunch crowd thinned out, but Brandon and his friends stayed, lingering over their food, ordering more coffee, showing no signs of leaving. Maya avoided their table as much as she could, sending Rick to refill their drinks to clear their plates. But eventually, inevitably, Brandon raised his hand, calling her over. "Check," he said when she approached. Maya pulled out her pad and calculated their total, her handwriting barely legible. She set the check on the table between them, already turning to leave. "Actually," Brandon said, and there was something different in his voice now, something sharp. "I don't think I'm going to pay this." Maya stopped. Turned back. "Excuse me?" He leaned back in the booth, studying her with eyes that were suddenly much more alert, much more focused. "The service has been pretty terrible. You've been avoiding our table all afternoon, and I'm still trying to figure out where I know you from." He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me your name, your real name, and then maybe I'll pay for this meal." The diner had gone quiet. Other customers were watching now, sensing the tension. Maya felt trapped, cornered, all her carefully constructed defenses crumbling. "My name is Maya Chen," she said firmly. "And you're going to pay for your meal and leave." Brandon's smile widened. "Maya Chen, that's interesting. Because about 20 minutes ago, I did a reverse image search on you. Took your picture when you weren't looking." He held up his phone, showing her a photo of herself from across the diner. "Facial recognition technology is amazing these days. Want to know what came up?" Maya's world tilted. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at that phone and wait for her life to implode. "Nothing," Brandon continued. "Absolutely nothing. No social media, no public records past about 15 years ago. It's like Maya Chen didn't exist before then. Which is really weird, don't you think? Unless someone's trying very hard to hide who they really are." He leaned forward. "So I'll ask again. Who are you really?" Maya's mind was racing, calculating odds, planning escapes. She thought about Emma, who'd be getting out of school in 2 hours. Who knew nothing about any of this? Who deserved a mother who wasn't constantly running from the past? I don't know what you're talking about, Maya said. I'm just a waitress. You're being paranoid. Am I? Brandon pulled out his wallet, but instead of paying, he set a business card on the table. That's my father's private number. I think I'll give him a call. Tell him I've found someone very interesting, someone who seems very eager to stay hidden. I bet he'd love to know. And Maya realized with a sickening clarity that this wasn't going to end with him just leaving. This wasn't going to end with her being able to go back to her quiet life. Brandon had recognized something in her, had caught the scent of a mystery, and he wasn't going to let it go. She had two choices. She could run again, tonight grab Emma and disappear before the Whitmores could mobilize, or she could stand her ground, face her past, and hope that the truth, or at least her version of it, would be enough to protect her and her daughter. I'm not serving you, Maya said quietly. You need to leave, now! Brandon's expression hardened. I don't think you understand the situation you're in. No, Maya said, and something in her voice made him pause. I don't think you understand the situation you're in. Are you threatening me? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. No, Maya said, and she felt strangely calm now, like she'd stepped off a cliff and was simply waiting to hit the ground. I'm telling you the truth. You should leave while you still can. He stood up abruptly, using his height to intimidate her just like his father used to do. I'm calling him right now. My father's going to want to know about this. About you. Go ahead, Maya said, and pulled out her phone. Her hands were steady now. She'd spent 18 years preparing for this moment, even if she'd desperately hoped it would never come. But I'm calling someone too, and I think my call is going to be a lot more interesting than yours. She dialed a number she'd memorized years ago and never used, a number she'd promised herself was only for absolute emergencies. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, a woman's voice answered, professional and cautious. Federal Witness Protection Service, how may I direct your call? Maya kept her eyes locked on Brandon as she spoke. This is Miranda Vasquez. Protective Custody Agreement number 773492. I need to speak with Agent Sarah Morrison immediately. Brandon's face went white. Behind him, his friends were exchanging confused glances, starting to realize that something was very wrong with the situation they'd stumbled into. Around the diner, customers were pulling out their own phones, some calling others, some recording, sensing that whatever was happening was significant. Miranda? A new voice came on the line, sharp with surprise and concern. After 18 years? What's happened? The Whitmores found me, Maya said simply. Or rather, their son did. I'm at Rosie's Diner in Cedar Falls, Oregon. I need extraction protocols activated for myself and my daughter. There was a pause. Then Sarah's voice came back harder, more official. Stay where you are. Don't let him leave. We've been building a case, Miranda. We've been waiting for an opening. Is this line secure? It's about as secure as it's going to get, Maya said, aware of all the eyes on her. Then tell him this, Sarah said. Tell Brandon Whitmore that if he calls his father, if he makes any attempt to leave that diner, he's going to become an accessory to witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, and about 15 other federal charges that we've been documenting for the past decade. Tell him that we've had surveillance on the Whitmore family since the incident 18 years ago, and we know exactly what his father did. Tell him that the only reason Marcus Whitmore isn't in federal prison right now is because we've been waiting for enough evidence to take down the entire operation. Not just one man. Maya relayed the message, watching Brandon's face cycle through disbelief, fear, and growing horror. He sank back into the booth, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. What incident? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. What are you talking about? Maya felt a bitter smile twist her lips. The night someone tried to kill you at your father's fundraiser. I was your bodyguard, Brandon. I took that bullet for you. And then I woke up in a hospital room and heard your father ordering a hit on the man who'd shot me to make sure he never made it to trial. Because it wasn't a random attack. It was a message from someone your father had crossed in his business dealings that weren't exactly legal. She could see him trying to process this, trying to reconcile the father he knew with what she was describing. That's not possible. My father wouldn't. Your father runs one of the largest money laundering operations on the East Coast, Maya continued, and the words felt like poison leaving her mouth, toxic truths she'd carried for too long. He's been doing it for decades, using his real estate empire as a front. I figured it out during my time protecting you. Saw things I wasn't supposed to see, overheard conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. The man who shot me, he was sent by a rival organization trying to hurt your father by hurting you, and your father made sure he disappeared before he could tell anyone who'd sent him or why. Rick had moved closer, and Maya became aware that someone in the diner was definitely recording this. The story was going to get out, was probably already spreading across social media, but she found she didn't care anymore. She was so tired of hiding, of being afraid, of looking over her shoulder. Brandon's phone rang. He looked down at it, and Maya saw the name on the screen. Dad. His hand was shaking as he stared at it. "Don't answer it," Maya said quietly. "Agent Morrison has a team en route. They'll be here in less than 10 minutes. If you cooperate, if you tell them everything you know about your father's business, you might be able to walk away from this. But if you warn him, if you give him time to destroy evidence or run, you're going down with him." "I don't know anything about his business," Brandon said, but there was doubt in his voice now, like he was remembering things that hadn't made sense at the time, pieces that were starting to fit together into a picture he didn't want to see. "Maybe not," Maya conceded, "but you're about to learn a lot more than you ever wanted to know about who your father really is." The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. Brandon let it ring through to voicemail, his face ashen. "I used to have nightmares," he said suddenly, looking up at Maya. "About that night. About someone jumping in front of me, about the blood. I was drunk and everything was confused, and my father told me I'd imagined it, that the security team had handled everything, that I was fine and that's all that mattered. But I remembered someone falling. I remembered screaming. That was me," Maya said softly. "And you didn't imagine it. Sirens began to wail in the distance, growing closer." Brandon's friends were trying to ease out of the booth, clearly wanting nothing to do with whatever federal investigation was about to descend, but Maya shook her head at them. "You're going to want to stay. They'll have questions for everyone who was here." 3 black SUVs pulled up outside the diner, and agents in FBI windbreakers poured out. Sarah Morrison was the first through the door. Older now, her hair shot through with gray, but Maya recognized her immediately. They'd worked together during those first terrified months after Maya had gone into witness protection, when every car backfiring had sent her diving for cover, when she'd wake up screaming from nightmares about Marcus Whitmore finding her. "Miranda," Sarah said, and there was relief in her voice. "God, it's good to see you alive." "It's Maya now," she replied. "I've been Maya for 18 years. Sarah nodded, understanding, then turned her attention to Brandon. "Brandon Whitmore, you're going to need to come with us. You're not under arrest, but we have a lot of questions, and depending on your answers, you might want to call a lawyer. A lawyer who doesn't work for your father." As agents moved through the diner, taking statements, securing the scene, Maya felt the weight of 18 years lifting off her shoulders. Her phone buzzed. Emma, asking if she could go to a friend's house after school. Maya texted back that she needed to come straight home, that they needed to talk, that everything was okay but also very complicated. Sarah pulled her aside while other agents processed Brandon and his friends. "We've been watching the Whitmores this entire time," she explained quietly. "Building a case, following the money, documenting everything. But Marcus Whitmore is careful, protected by layers of legitimate business and expensive lawyers. We needed something to crack the facade, some way to get inside the family dynamics. And now his son just led us right to you, the one person who can testify to what you heard that night, who can corroborate what we've been suspecting for years." "I have a daughter," Maya said. "She doesn't know any of this. She's never known why we don't have family, why we've always been alone, why I've always been so careful." "We'll protect you both," Sarah promised. "Properly this time. But Maya, Miranda, we need you to testify. We need you to tell a grand jury everything you saw, everything you heard. Can you do that?" Maya thought about Emma, about the life they'd built in this small town, about the diner and Rick and the simple existence she'd crafted from nothing. She thought about all the years of fear, of looking over her shoulder, of wondering when the past would catch up with her. And she thought about Marcus Whitmore, sitting in his mansion, believing he was untouchable, that his money and power put him above consequences. "Yes," she said. "I can do that." The news crews started arriving within the hour, drawn by social media posts and police scanners, by the dramatic story of a secret witness emerging after 18 years and a billionaire's empire about to crumble. Maya watched them set up outside, their cameras and lights turning the parking lot into a circus, and felt surreal. She'd spent so long being invisible, being nobody, hiding in plain sight. Now the whole world was about to learn who Maya Chen really was, or rather, who she'd been all along. The trial, when it came 6 months later, was everything Sarah had promised: comprehensive, devastating, and public. Maya took the stand in a federal courthouse and told her story to a packed courtroom, to news cameras, to a jury that listened with rapt attention. She described the night of the shooting, the conversation she'd overheard, the fear that had sent her running. Other witnesses corroborated her testimony: financial experts, former employees, people who'd been too afraid to speak up until now but found courage in her example. Marcus Whitmore was convicted on 17 federal charges and sentenced to 30 years in prison. His empire crumbled, his assets seized, his family legacy revealed as a facade hiding decades of criminal activity. Brandon, who'd cooperated fully with investigators and testified against his father, disappeared from public life entirely, his trust fund frozen, his future uncertain, and Maya, Miranda, found herself in an estranged new reality. The Witness Protection Service offered to relocate her again, to give her yet another new identity, but she declined. She was done hiding, done being afraid. The story was out, the danger had passed, and she wanted to live in the light for once. Some mornings, she still woke up with her heart racing, still checked over her shoulder out of habit. The fear didn't just disappear because the threat was gone, but it got better, slowly, day by day. And when Emma graduated high school with honors, when she gave a speech about courage and resilience and mothers who protected their children, Maya sat in the audience and cried tears that were entirely free of regret. Hit like if you love this story. Must write comment from where you are watching, and don't forget to subscribe.